Why do growing businesses love working in Slack? Let's ask Christy at Ari Bikes.
Running things in Slack saves me so much time.
AI summaries save 97 minutes per week. What say you, Rox from Gosney?
Slack helps us build community, it helps us build connection.
Your partners, vendors and customers all in one place. Take us on home, Ashley from Caraway.
If we didn't have Slack tomorrow, I would explode.
Well, let's not let that happen. Visit slack.com/podcast to get 50% off Slack Business Plus.
Here's to quitting. Quitting the couch for a quick run. Quitting the snooze button for a morning workout. Quitting giving up after 2 weeks. You see, staying committed to your fitness goals isn't easy. But with Apple Watch, you don't have to do it alone. Because Apple Watch gives you real-time motivation, plus advanced metrics that track all your workouts, so you can stick to your New Year's fitness resolutions. And once and for all, quit quitting with Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I am Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis as we continue our end of the year reviews, position group by position group. Today we're doing the wide receivers and the cornerbacks, which both of these two, Stefan and Andrew, have been voicing their excitement to talk about these groups. And I don't know yet if that's a good thing or a bad thing that they're ready to talk about these groups so much. So I guess we'll just get straight into it. With the wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, 87 catches, 1,243 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Those catches and yards led the Big Ten. He was the Big Ten wide receiver of the year. But remember, he was the best big wide receiver in the Big Ten, but not the best receiver in the country. The best wide receiver in the country was also from the Big Ten, but not the best receiver in the Big Ten. Carnell Tate, 51 catches, 875 yards, and 9 touchdowns. And then Brandon Ennis, 36 catches, 271 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Those are the only wide receivers who had more than 10 catches this year. JJ continues this streak of 1,000-yard receivers at Ohio State that dates back to 2021. Stefan, did Ohio State exceed, meet, or fall short of his expectations at wide receiver in 2025?
I think it's fall short. I think they fell short of expectations. I thought JJ was about what you would expect, and that's very high expectations, and he lived up to all that again this year. I thought Carnell Tate took the step that we all wanted him to take as he kind of moved up from wide receiver number 3 to number 2. And then outside of that, I think you fell short, right? So if the top 2 guys met expectations and everyone else kind of fell short, then the group as a whole kind of fell short, in my opinion. I thought, I had higher expectations for Brandon Ennis, and I understand some of his numbers are a result of, Ohio State's approach with tight ends, and he wasn't necessarily on the field as much as, guys like Emeka and other slot receivers at Ohio State were. But that said, I don't think the group necessarily developed in a way that we thought it would develop. Now, Quincy Porter obviously battled injury, so that's a caveat there. But I thought all 3 of us had pretty high expectations for what Mylan Graham would bring into this group this year. I don't know, in the biggest moments when JJ and Carnell were sidelined, we saw more of David Adolph than we saw Graham, right? So and Bryson Rogers, I don't think necessarily, made a huge impact this season either. He had some okay moments. I guess Purdue was probably his best game, where he had a touchdown, I think, against UCLA, but outside that, kind of fell short of expectations. So, for a unit that Gillis and I thought was kind of unquestioned the deepest unit, at least on offense coming into the season, wasn't that, right? You had what you thought you were going to have at the top. And then outside of that, you fell short of expectations. And I think that's kind of a reflection on the room as a whole this year. And I think a lot of what I'm going to want to talk about is maybe this position group more than any encapsulates or embodies some of the questions I have about this offense and this offensive approach. So I'm not, I don't want to fully put all the blame on Mylan Graham or Bryson Rogers or Brandon Ennis because of Ohio State's offensive approach at times. But at the same time, I think I think 2 things can be true, where the offensive approach maybe wasn't what we thought it was going to be. And at the same time, Mylan Graham, from the way Ryan Day talked about him really throughout the season, wasn't necessarily doing things to say, hey, you need to put me on the field, right? So 2 things can be true there.
Yeah, Andrew, there's almost this chicken or the egg conversation when talking about the wide receiver group in expectations. Did they not meet your expectations because they weren't as good as you thought they were going to be? Or did they not meet your expectations because they weren't used necessarily the way you thought they were going to be?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's like, did they meet, fall short, or exceed their expectations and then like national title expectations? Because like, I don't know, I think their room was certainly good enough for like national championship expectations, right? Like, I think if we covered college team A and we just said, hey, you're going to have this guy and this guy as your number 1 and 2 receiver and this guy's your number 3, we would have been like, yep, that can win you a national championship. But like, was it Ohio State expectations? I think barely no, just because the first 2 guys were so good. You know, JJ was awesome. Carnell was also awesome. Like, there was a point in time where I think I brought it up. I was like, Carnell Tate's much closer to Jeremiah Smith than maybe I think people want to talk about. Like, I think that was like September or October where it was, and that's not a dig at JJ. That's just saying like Carnell Tate is the number 1 receiver in the 2026 class, in my opinion. And I feel like we're talking about JJ as if he and Carnell are like not the same like species. So like those 2 were unbelievable. Everything else, I think they fell short, and it's not because like they looked at their room and went, oh, well, I guess we just have to use 7 tight ends now. I think they looked at their room and they went, I think Brandon Inniss is fine. Like, I don't think Brandon Inniss ending the year with 36 catches for 271 yards and 3 touchdowns was an element of, oh, no, he's actually like a first round receiver. Julian Sand just doesn't look his way. He just refuses to throw him the ball because he refuses to throw him the ball. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily that. Like, I think Brandon Inniss is a really solid number 3. He's a really good number 3 in like a general college sense. Obviously he would have better numbers if he had played with not JJ or not Carnell, I think. But I don't think this was they're just ignoring him. He doesn't exist in this offense. I think that that's overblown a little bit. I mean, we saw what they did in the red zone, and like you said, Steven, chicken or the egg. It's like, okay, they doing this because they're like, oh, our tight ends are just better than everybody else. This is how we can blow people off the line of scrimmage. Or were they also doing it because, I don't know, they get to Indiana in the Big Ten championship game and you're trying to load manage Carnell and Jeremiah a little bit. And it's like, all right, they did this against Penn State. They got in 24. They got into the red zone and they just mass subbed everybody in receiver and they still threw the ball. Like, they didn't do that this year. And I don't think that's because solely they believed so wholeheartedly in their tight end group. I think they probably looked at 3, 4, 5, 6 in their receiver room and went, is this good enough? And I don't know. So yeah, I think they fell short, and I definitely kind of fall on it wasn't a plan to just ignore those guys. I think they kind of operated with what they had.
Stefan, do you agree with that sentiment that Carnell Tate is not that far off from Jeremiah Smith as a wide receiver?
I don't think he's that far off. I think there's certainly a gap, but I don't know if in 3 years, 4 years, you told me that Carnell Tate's the 5th best receiver in the NFL and Jeremiah Smith is 2nd. I don't think that's a huge gap.
I would have agreed with that before their last 2 games when they started playing real opponents. And JJ still managed to have 8 catches for 144 yards and 7 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown, while Carnell Tate. Jeremiah Smith had more yards in catches in one of those games than what Carnell Tate had combined the last 2 games of the season. So if they were equal, I don't know. It's going to sound like I'm hating on Carnell Tate. I don't want that to be the case. I think there is a sizable gap between where they are. And that's not because Carnell Tate is not a really good receiver, but it's because Jerry Rice's name has been brought up before with Jeremiah Smith. So we can't say that and then go, I don't know, man, the gap is not that wide between those 2. I think that if Jeremiah Smith is, in your hypothetical, Stefan, like the 2nd best receiver one day, and so we're assuming that like either Jamar Chase or Jack Smith-Njigba or Justin Jefferson, one of those 2 is probably the guy ahead of him, and Carnell Tate is 5, there is a huge gap for me between where 2 and 5 are. And it's just like Jeremiah Smith is a generational receiver. Carnell Tate is a very, very good receiver. That's why when we've had those conversations, Carnell Tate, I think, is technically more sound than JJ is, he's also a year older. And in a room full of dudes, it's like Carnell Tate got in here and immediately became the best receiver in the room. I mean, Carnell Tate had a normal development where he had to sit for a year. Then he spent the year being kind of a secondary piece. And now he's a primary piece. He felt like in the Big Ten championship and then the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State's offense looked very similar to 2023, where it was either we get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball as much as humanly possible or we're going to lose a football game. And they did that with JJ. They just lost the football game anyway because they didn't do it enough. And so because that's why I'm fall short, because I'm the same guy who back in the spring was like, hey, man, this room looks really similar to 2021, where you got three dudes who are options to throw the football to. You got a young quarterback who's got a lot of arm talent. I think they're going to throw it around the yard. They didn't really throw it around the yard. Unfortunately, Carnell missed some games, and so that's why he's not a 1,000-yard receiver. He missed what are essentially stat padding games between Purdue, UCLA, and Rutgers. But even at full strength, he had the big catch against Michigan, the 50-yard touchdown catch, in a game where even JJ told us afterward, I was not close. I was much closer to not playing in that game than I was having the dirtiest sluggle seam route any of us have ever seen and scoring a 40-yard touchdown on 4th and 5 in that game, which is crazy. Twice in their last 3 games, Ohio State decided, nope, we're not going to go to Jaden Fielding. We're going to throw it to Jeremiah Smith down the field. And in 2 situations, he got up a touchdown. And in one of those situations, his thigh was falling off of his body still. And he was scared that he wasn't going to play. But I don't know if I would have projected 6 months ago that, hey, Ohio State's going to get in the biggest games of the season, and their offense is, please, Jeremiah, save us. And that's what it felt like. And I don't know how the room got there. I don't know how much of that is Brian Hartline was around the receivers less, especially on game days, because he was up in the box. I don't know it's Brian Hartline's the offensive coordinator who's a play caller, which means he's in charge of more on a day-to-day basis, right? It's his job to put together the offensive plan, the practice sheet and all those different things. I don't know if this was the approach to Gillis' point of hey, we're just going to play a lot more tight ends this year. Maybe it's all those things combined, but there's no way any of us would have said on July 1st, 2025, we're going to get to the end of this year. And it feels like in the 3 biggest games of the season, which essentially were Texas, Indiana, and Miami in terms of they played high-level defenses. In 2 of those 3 games, it turned into, please, Jeremiah, you have to touch it as much as humanly possible. And then the other one, they didn't let their quarterback do anything, and he missed Jeremiah Smith on an open 40-yard touchdown bomb. That is not at all where Ohio State's wide receivers have lived outside of injury in 2023, because Emeka was spending that year dealing with an ankle injury, where it feels like it's a one-man show. And in the playoff, it turned into a one-man show, and that's not good. So that's why it's
yeah. Cardinal did have the big play against Texas.
He did. He had the one time that they let Julian Sand throw it down the field. So I'll give him
great
that.
Play.
He did. But it's just, I don't know. Everybody else in the passing game felt like an afterthought the last 2 games of the season. And I don't know how they got there in a world where you have 2 first-round draft picks. Bona fide. Cardinal Tate might be the first wide receiver off the board in 2 months here. And JJ's definitely going to be the first wide receiver off the board in 14 months. And we got to a point in the playoff where only one of those guys is getting the ball. And that we can't blame all of that on Julian Sand maybe missed a guy.
What is funny is that 2 of those 3 games you mentioned, Texas, Indiana, and Ohio and Miami, Carnell had 2 of the team's 4 touchdowns?
Yes. It's oh, this guy gets the touchdown. This guy gets every other touch imaginable.
Yeah.
Best thing about this group's that Andrew in 2025.
Points at number 4 and 17. I think, to be more specific, I think you can make a really good case that this was the best 1-2 punch that Ohio State receivers have ever had. And that's obviously, you have JJ, who might be the most talented and the best receiver in this kind of run, right? When we did, before Stefan got here, it was leading into meaningless game that Ohio State was going to win by 35 points. We did a Mount Buckmore of Marvin Harrison Jr., and we talked about kind of where his rank was, and I think we put him first. We kind of laughed at it, hey, maybe we have to do this again a few years down the line because JJ, and we might have to do this a few years down the line because JJ. So yeah, the best thing was the best 2. They were arguably the best 2 receivers in recent memory. I know Olave and Wilson were great. I know Emeka and Marv were great. Like, I know you could just kind of run down the line of those 1-2 punches year in and year out, really from like 2021 on or 2020 on or whatever. But those Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith were genuinely elite. And Jeremiah and Carnell, I think, have kind of locked them. Like, JJ is certainly going to be a top 10 pick. Carnell, everything I'm reading right now about, now that the NFL draft order's set, kind of has him going, I don't know, 5th, 6th, 4th. Like, everything's got him going there. So I think in terms of pure talent, they were above reproach this year. They were awesome. And I know they got hurt. I know they got banged up. But when they were both on the field, they were, damn near impossible to stop.
Before we keep talking about Jeremiah Smith, you guys see the stat going on about Garrett Wilson this season?
How he hasn't played since week 6, and yeah, he ended up leading the Jets in receiving yards.
Yeah. That's astounding.
Is it me, or did the NFL have like 1 million of those this year? That's crazy.
1 million what?
1 million of those, like did you see the one where it's like the Falcons tied for first in their division and they were eliminated from playoff contention? It's like, I look at those stats and it's like, huh? That does
but that's
395 yards and he was their leading receiver and he hadn't called out since week 6.
Yeah, but that other one is a very big difference of like, that just shows you everything about where the Jets passing game was.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What I guess nothing is more surprising than the Jets defense not getting a single interception this year. That's pretty close to it. 195 yards and your last catch was like mid-October. And you led the team in receiving yards.
I mean, how many games did like Justin Fields have less than 50 receiving yards, less than 50 passing yards? Which is crazy because sometimes you can accidentally slip and fall into a busted coverage, and now you got a 56-yard gain.
Right.
They couldn't even get that. But
like looking at some they scored 20 points against the Jaguars. Like nobody could like move a little bit for you. You know what I mean? Like they had 27 against the Falcons when they beat them. They had like. There were games now and then that they put up something. Like, it's not like they were getting shut out every week.
Is this your way of telling Ohio State fans it could have been worse?
No, I genuinely don't think Ohio State can get that bad with its passing attack. Unless Ryan Day leaves and, like, the triple option is, like, mandated in college football. Which Gillis, I'm sure, would love. That would be the worst thing to happen to this room.
Hell yeah.
When we get there.
Best thing about the room in 20.
The J.J. Carnell thing obviously is impressive. They both had really good seasons, and both had to battle through some injury. But I think the best thing is maybe kind of relative in the sense that in a year where it felt like your room wasn't exactly in its totality at its peak, and maybe some of the younger players you expected to take a step didn't take a step, and you lost the coach that has put together this incredible run of recruiting and developing receiver talent, you haven't necessarily taken too much of a step back in terms of the trajectory of what receiver play at Ohio State is, right? Like you're still going to have a first-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year with Jeremiah Smith. You were still able to land a guy like Chris Henry Jr. that came down, literally to the wire, right? Like you're in the mix for, bringing in some portal guys at receiver, maybe even opening up that route of improving the room and having receiver play. You were able to get a receivers coach who's very established and has had some success recruiting and developing some of the biggest names now in the NFL. So despite all the struggles and the coaching staff change and all this and that's come with the receiver room, the room is still in a really good spot. And the trajectory of where Ohio State receiver play is going is in a really good spot. And Ryan Day and his offense, or at least a reputation of his offense, probably play a big part in that. His development of quarterbacks plays a big part in that. So say what you will about the receivers, and we've criticized them already. There's numbers I've written down that I'm still ready to criticize some more. But I don't know. Is Ohio State wide receivers still, in terms of like health and culture and just state of the room, still one of the best position rooms in the country? I think so.
I think Cortez Hankton's going to be a homer. I think the initial reaction to it was very similar to the reaction people had to Matt Patricia, and valid the reasons why people felt that way among those people, and we were wrong. I think if you just look at the context behind Cortez Hankton and some of the stuff he was doing at other spots, it's like, okay, what if he wasn't being handcuffed while he was doing some of those things? Cortez Hankton got George Pickens out of Alabama at a time when Alabama was also on a run of elite wide receivers. He got him to Georgia of all places. He went and found Ladd McConkey as a dude who was rated outside the top 1,000 in his recruiting class. And Lab McConkey had 1,000 yards as a rookie. He didn't follow that up, but that's because he plays for Jim Harbaugh. And they like to throw the ball at 75 people and run the ball 40 million times. I mean, this is the dude who was the passing game coordinator and the wide receivers coach the year Jaden Daniels won the Heisman for LSU. And Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were first-round draft picks. And both of those dudes were pretty awesome their rookie years. Brian Thomas didn't follow his up, obviously, and Malik Neighbors got hurt this year. But Malik Neighbors is one of like the 7 best receivers in the NFL when he's healthy already. Like very quickly that happened. He had DeCorian Moore committed to LSU, and then the business of college football got in the way. Listen, we cover a team where it feels like they're not always full throttle in the NIL space. Brian Kelly was really not full throttle in the NIL space, and it cost him DeCorian Moore. And to be frank about it, it probably cost him Bryce Underwood too, which Cortez Hankton also played a role in getting. So if you're worried about somebody keeping the standard that Brian Hartline set here, first of all, I don't know if what Brian Hartline did over the last 7 years is realistic for anybody in this climate where college football is. But if someone were to do it, I think Cortez Hankton has a resume that if you go actually look at some background and find some context behind it, I think he might be able to do it because he's now at a school where receiver is so pivotal to what they do. He's not going to get a kid committed and then 8 months from his commitment when it's time to start ponying up. Ohio State's going to go, no, we don't want to pay that. I mean, we just saw it with Chris Henry Jr. Tristan Keys, who was a number 2 wide receiver in the 2026 recruiting class. He was committed to LSU for like 6 or 7 months. And then the business got in the way. And so now he flips to Tennessee. Like Gillis, you've talked to assistant coaches. How many times has it felt like I did my part and now all of a sudden we got to deal with the business and I feel like I just wasted 6 months of my life talking to a kid? And I'm wondering if Cortez Hankton has felt that at LSU over the last few years. Well, he doesn't have to worry about that now. And he gets to take over a room that's got Jeremiah Smith and Chris Henry Jr. and Quincy Porter in it. I have a lot of faith in what he'll be. And I think that's my best thing about the room in 2025 is that they got through this. You still got the 3 guys, most important guys, with all due respect to Mylan Graham, who's now in the portal, Bryson Rogers, who's now in the portal. Listen, they're going to pull their heads up for spring practice, and they're going to have Jeremiah Smith, Chris Henry Jr., and Quincy Porter. And we'll see what they do in the portal to offset that, along with Brandon Ennis. But I think this is the best case scenario for the room. I think the Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate stuff, I just don't think they can be part of the conversation the way that we thought they were going to be part of the conversation after the Penn State game, because that was it. That was the last we saw those two at their full maximum capacity as Ohio State football players. I can't compare them to Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson 2020. They got to the national championship game. I can't compare them to Marvin and Mecca. They were both 1,000-yard receivers. I can't even compare them to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. They were both 1,000-yard receivers and won a national championship. Now, what is the thing that these guys have over all those other guys? They beat Michigan. So sure, that's their calling card. But I just don't know if great wide receiver group who didn't win the Big Ten and they lost their only playoff game, I just don't know if they can be in the cards the way we wanted them to be. So if we're going to talk talent, probably. These are probably the best 2 from a talent standpoint. But as I said to one of our texters, 614-350-3315, we're talking about Bryce Underwood. Talent and good are not the same to me. Talent is what you're blessed with. Good is what you do with what you're blessed with. And unfortunately, there was a lot left on the table for this wide receiver tandem, which is like honestly the worst part for me.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of that in college football too. I remember the lead up to the Rose Bowl when people were picking Alabama because of talent. And I'm sitting there being like, if you pick the 22 best players on this field, how many of them play for Indiana? So like, is there sure, there's a recruiting gap, but like, is there a talent gap? At least in a playoff game where you're not playing your 3 deep, playing, your 1.5 deep.
And also, who cares about where they were recruited by that point? USF, South Florida's going to have a former 5-star recruit on their roster next season. That's going to look good in the 247 composite rating, right? Does it matter once the ball gets kicked off? Like, no. So who cares? Sure, Alabama has recruited historically better than Indiana does, which is also why Indiana is so active in the portal right now. Kirk Cignetti is not out of the we have to rely on the portal heavily window yet. He still has to do that for maybe a couple more years. Go look at their recruiting class. It's not like they landed a bunch of top 100 recruits. They recruited how Indiana always recruits. So he's got to offset that for a couple more years. But you being talented means nothing to me. Ohio State was more talented than Indiana, and they lost. Ohio State was more talented than Miami, and they lost. So Ole Miss beat Georgia, and their head coach is in Baton Rouge right now. So I don't care about the talent part of it. But the worst thing for me is it feels like in a world where you can look back on the Ryan Day era and every single year go, man, they really missed out on something. I can't believe you didn't win with this roster. I think these receivers, these two, it's like, man, I can't believe there wasn't more done with these two as your best receivers. I can't believe Mylan Graham spent 2 years here and we never really got to see what he is. The idea of Mylan Graham is based off of a touchdown catch in the spring game. Bryson Rogers was here for 3 years and we never really got to see what he was. This is the one where it's like, and the attrition was always going to happen, but I feel like the wide receiver room and the cornerback room, when we talk about that as well, these two rooms are the two rooms where it's like, there are guys leaving where they showed up as ideas and they're leaving as ideas. And so we don't really know if Ohio State missed out on anything yet or not. And it's unfortunate because that's the world we live in with college football. Anybody can go.
We're doing worse now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what this pace of play, what impact it could have on development of the receiver room specifically. Because fewer snaps can lead to fewer opportunities. I'm not saying, again, chicken or the egg. I'm not saying Mylan Graham did not produce only because he wasn't given opportunity. I'm sure behind the scenes he had plenty of opportunities to climb up the depth chart and prove that, you know, he was a guy that they could trust to put out there. But also, like, so I went through and I want to look at some of the numbers in terms of snap counts and things of that nature with receivers. So 2021 and 2022, respectively, the top two snap counts for a receiver was Olave in 21 with 57 snaps per game, Marv in 22 with 58 snaps per game. You look at that the last 2 years, JJ has had the most snaps per game for Ohio State. It's been around 48. So you've taken JJ's workload down about 10 snaps per game versus where you were, you know, when you were playing a bit faster. And sure, in the long term, that makes sense. You get JJ off his feet a little bit more. You get to, you know, keep him healthy. And I know I say that ironically because he did get banged up this year, right? Like injuries still happen no matter how many snaps you play. But that's, I don't know, that's 10 snaps per game. That doesn't necessarily have to go to JJ, right? You can build a big early lead and have opportunities for some other guys to play more. Because I look at this year's roster. So JJ 48 snaps per game, Carnell 45, Ennis 31, and then Bryson Rogers was next with 18. But he only played, I think it was 7 or 8 games because he was a little bit banged up this year. So let's use Mylan Graham as an example instead as the fourth wide receiver. Played 13 snaps a game. Marv was fourth in terms of snaps per game on the roster at receiver. He had 21. Like, we're talking like 8 snaps per game. Or if you want to go back, like, or the year before, or sorry, the year after in 22, Xavier Johnson was fourth in terms of receivers and snaps per game. He was at 18. So, okay, Marv's maybe getting more because he's Marv. But, okay, 18 compared to Mylan Graham's 13. Like, that's 5 snaps per game. Over a 12-game season, we're talking about 60 snaps. That's a decent workload, right? So I think the worst thing for this group, and it concerns me a little bit in terms of long-term, just in terms of development, of just if there's a lower snap count and a different place of play, that's fine because it does help out the JJs and the Emekas and the Carnells stay off their feet, stay healthy, prepare for a 16, 17-game season. Okay, that's fine. But when JJ or Carnell leaves this year, I don't know. Quincy Porter was banged up. You feel good about what he's going to be. I think he's a good player, but like we didn't see a ton in 2024 or 2025 to necessarily give us a huge amount of like. He's not a surefire. This guy's going to be everything because we saw it, right? You don't have that from Mylan Graham. So now you're going into the season where you have a bit more questions. Whereas again, Marv, a lot more talented than some of the guys we're talking about here, even though he was a lower recruiting profile technically than Mylan Graham, but like,
and he wasn't Marv. That's
right.
What you said earlier. I get it because he's Marv. He wasn't Marv.
He wasn't at that point, yeah. But you could see signs of 2021 where he's playing 20, 21 snaps a game.
Yeah.
That tells you, okay, in 2022, this is a guy that's ready. I don't know, even if Mylan Graham had the trust of this staff and was the fourth receiver, and when Carnell and JJ were banged up, they trusted him to go in there. I still don't know how many reps he would have to necessarily prove that to you a ton. More, certainly more. Again, chicken or the egg. But I don't know. I wonder if at some point Ryan Day will kind of look at this approach and say, what if we sped it up, but still Jeremiah only played 40, instead of 48, he plays 50 snaps a game. But as a result, that also means that next season, a guy like, I don't know, give me a receiver outside of like Chris Henry, Brandon Inniss, Quincy Porter, and Jeremiah Smith next year.
Phillip Bell.
Okay. Phillip Bell, instead of playing 10 snaps a game, he plays 15 snaps a game. Like, are you willing to play JJ for a couple more snaps more if it means potentially building a lead and getting, a few extra snaps for Phillip Bell?
Or just rotating.
And maybe that's a change in position coach could lead to a change of philosophy on that. Yeah, that's certainly part of it.
Because they used to rotate all the time.
I don't know if this pace of play allows a ton for rotating because they're not building massive leads.
Well, no. What I am saying is they're playing slower to take snaps off of people's belts. Okay. What if you just played faster and played more people?
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's they used to rotate here all the time. 28 Dwayne Haskins threw for like 4,500 yards and 50 touchdowns. It's not like they had a bunch of dudes who had 1,500 yards. They played 4 guys on the outside and 2 guys on the inside. In 2019, they played 4 guys on the outside and then KJ Hill played on the inside. Then 2020 happened and they stopped rotating. They played Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jamison Williams. And then in 2021, they didn't rotate at all. Marv, they just blew teams out at times, and so Marv got the opportunity. Plus, the Rose Bowl game probably hiked up his snap count per game for Marv and Emeka. And then in 2022, didn't rotate. It was Marv, Emeka, and Julian Fleming because Jackson Smith-Jigba was hurt. In 2023, it was Marv, Julian Fleming, and then Emeka, and then like Xavier Johnson got in there a little bit. We kind of saw Carnell, but Carnell was also not fully healthy that year. They have stopped rotating the receivers, and they're playing less snaps. So you are correct. There's no room to play more guys because you're playing 61 snaps per game. Why play 73 snaps per game and rotate? There's no reason, obviously schedule I understand is harder next year. There's no reason that Jeremiah Smith needs to play more than 30 snaps against Ball State, like at all. There's no reason for that. To be frank about it, I get it. Right now, the schedule looks difficult. But you know what also looked difficult? This year's schedule, when they lost 8 starters on defense and they had the preseason number 1 and number 2 teams and a bunch of veteran quarterbacks on their schedule. And they ran through that schedule pretty easily. So I'm not just going to say just because there's a bunch of helmets on their schedule that this is going to be a difficult schedule. There are going to be some good teams. There are going to be some teams that aren't as good as we thought they were going to be. There might be a team that's better than we thought they were going to be, and that's going to be that. And at worst, Ohio State's going to go 10-2. At best, they're going to go 12-0. Either way, we're covering a college football playoff game next year until I'm proven otherwise. But Ball State, Kent State, Maryland, Northwestern, USC, I don't respect Lincoln Riley yet. Illinois, why not? Why not rotate J.J. Quincy Porter and Chris Henry Jr.? Why not rotate Phillip Bell? Why not rotate Brandon Inniss? Why not rotate insert transfer portal wide receiver here? You're right, Stefan. If you're going to recruit receiver like this, you got to play these dudes. They're going to leave. And not just because you're scared they're going to leave. You are paying these people now, which means you need to find out whether the financial investment you are making in a Mylan Graham is worth it by playing him in football games versus, he spent 2 years developing in the background while we paid him to do so. And then he leaves here and you never really know what you had. So you just kind of wasted your money there. I agree with you, Stefan.
It's like if you've ever bought something for your apartment and you're like, ooh, you know what would be good? Like this new rice cooker. And you buy this like fancy rice cooker and then you just
use the rice cooker.
Like it's at some point it's like, all right, I just spent all this money. I better make some damn rice. Or why is it just taking up counter space? So it's like, that's fine if you want a rice cooker. I have one. They're great. It's really, really good for chicken and rice. It's great stuff. But
most basic meal in the world.
Yeah, I know. It's simple. Just to build off of what Stefan's point was like, who's next? Like in 23, we looked at that receiving core of Marv, Emeka, and Julian Fleming and went, oh, well, they have this guy, Carnell Tate. He looks pretty good. He's going to be kind of their next in line. And then this superstar showed up in JJ, who's a generational player. So you kind of got double whammied there. But like you saw next, like even last year, we were like, yeah, Carnell's really good, but he's the third fiddle. But next year he'll be the second fiddle. And you saw enough to where you were confident in it. Right now, your options for JJ's Robin are Brandon Inniss, which like maybe maybe he gets 80 catches and is electric. I don't know if you can say that with a whole ton of confidence, considering he just only had 36 catches. And yes, I know Carnell's leaving, but like, I don't know. Do you feel confident that he's going to do it? Are you confident in what you saw from Quincy Porter, that Quincy Porter is going to be the number 2 where teams just can't say, hey, look, it's the Jordan rules against Ohio State. Anybody but JJ and we'll be fine. He was hurt all year, and that's not his fault. That's not Ohio State's fault. Like, he was hurt, but you have questions about it. Mylan Graham is gone, but you didn't really see a ton from him that would let you to believe, like, hey, look, mini Garrett Wilson is going to be electric next year. You didn't see that. Are you watching Chris Henry Jr. highlight tapes from St. John Bosco's matchup and going like, hey, I think he's going to do this against Michigan and against Texas?
Yes.
He might be really good.
I'm saying that.
I think what we can't do is look at JJ and be like, 1,000 yards as a true freshman is normal. Because maybe Chris Henry can do that, but it's not normal. And like, if we're going to say that JJ's generational, is Chris Henry Jr. generational? Like, are there 2 generational guys in one generation? I don't know. Like, if you want to put Chris Henry Jr. label on that, that's fine. But my counter to that, and I'm looking at this through a negative point, obviously, because it's the worst thing about the position group, would be your options for legitimate number 2, which Ohio State has had for the last better part of a decade. Not just like a legitimate number 2, like a first-round pick level number 2, are Brandon Inniss, dude who played slot for you, who had 36 catches, a dude who was hurt all year and is going into his second year, the other guy who's gone, who you thought maybe could do that, and then a true freshman who is 6'6" and is electrifying, but is a true freshman. And I think that is important to remember. So it's like, go down the line, everybody else is unproven. So it's that would be my worst thing about the group, is that there was not we saw this guy flash against Wisconsin when it was 27-0 to make you think, okay, when he takes another step forward next year, this is going to be it. I didn't see that. So right now it's JJ, and it's a lot of potential. It's a hell of a lot of potential. They have the potential to be the best receiving core in the country again, but it is much less certain than it was last year or the year before, where you were able to look at the young guys and say, you're going to have 70 catches in a year. You're going to be a locked in, guaranteed, no doubt about it, first round pick in a year. Do we think Chris Henry Jr. is going to be a first round pick? Yeah, probably. Can Quincy Porter be a first round pick? Yeah, probably. But like, there were at least signs of what we had seen in the past about some of these guys, and we just don't have that right now. Like, we don't have like the evidence. Like, we're going to talk. Like, Stephen was talking about recruiting rankings at the beginning of this. The evidence is literally recruiting rankings.
No, I know.
That is the evidence for a dude being electric.
No, I'm with you. And this is where like using recruiting rankings can be hypocritical, because some places it's okay and some places it's not okay. I mean, there were not like crazy signs in 2023 that Carnell Tate was going to be this. It was more of like
not crazy signs. He played 26.5 snaps per game though.
Yeah.
There was at least workload.
And it looked decent. And Emeka came back.
Emeka got hurt.
JJ and Carnell got hurt.
Good point. Quincy was hurt. No, this is not about Mylan Graham. This is about Quincy.
Okay.
Yeah. Quincy was on the same path that Marvin and Carnell were on when they first got here. He lost his black stripe practice number 3 of the spring, and he had a really good fall. He just got hurt, and he couldn't get off the availability report. So that's why that one is a little more like, okay, it seemed like you were about to do that. You were about to be the freshman who showed just enough to where we went, okay, there's more there once you get the opportunity. I can live with that. That's not Bryson Rogers and Mylan Graham not being able to get off on the field over David Adolph to me. I mean, look, man, I'm not saying that Chris Henry Jr. is going to have 1,000 yards next year. I'm also not going to say he's not going to have 1,000 yards next year, because nobody in the room right now did anything that suggests that Chris Henry Jr. can't get on the field. You're right. He's not JJ. There's only one JJ. I don't think he has to be JJ to have an 1,000-yard season next year. Justin Ross, as a true freshman at Clemson, had 46 catches for 1,000 yards on the dot and 9 touchdowns. Like, JJ is not the first true freshman receiver to have 1,000 yards. He's just the best true freshman receiver to have 1,000 yards. So I'm with you. This year's room, it's not a good sign that a walk-on was getting more playing time than 5-star recruits. But it goes back to mine of like, I wonder how different things would have been if Quincy Porter not gotten hurt early in the year and was like dealing with it all the way through the season. Like we were in there, Stefan, for that practice before they left for the Cotton Bowl. Did he look like a dude that was like needed to be walking around in pads?
I was very stunned to see him in uniform when I saw him.
He was like limping back to the locker room, man.
I almost walked away more surprised to see him in uniform than Tegra in uniform. And Tegra, we knew, was banged up.
Yeah. Like, I'm looking at Quincy like, go sit down. Please go sit down. So him getting healthy, Chris Henry Jr. gets to have the 5-star hype for at least, I think the 5-star hype can carry you through your freshman year. But you need to start flashing it immediately before we start going, all right, well, that 5-star recruit is now like a 4-star player. Okay, that 4-star player is now a 3-star production. Like that, I think it's okay for right now. Very quick answers because we're over time here with the wide receivers, but I knew that was going to happen because I love receivers and you guys were really excited.
You guys know once I start like jotting down numbers, it's game over.
Yeah, it's going to take a minute. Very quick answer, Gillis, scale of 1 to 10, how good was the room in 2025?
6.5.
Stefan?
7.
Yeah, I'm with you, Gillis. And I think that number 4 and number 17 really carried that 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they're worth 6.5 points.
Yeah.
By themselves.
And then you just got nothing from
and then you just got nothing from anybody.
Yeah, like we looked at I think it was the UCLA game where both Carnell and JJ, or no, not UCLA, it was the Rutgers game where both Carnell and JJ were out, and we're like, why is this happening? Like, why are they running 14 personnel on 1st and 10? And it wasn't maybe 14 personnel like they ran against Indiana. It was because Smiling Graham and company couldn't get on the field.
I can't wait till we talk about the tight ends because I'm going to save this comment for then. Are the 2026 starters already on the roster in his 2026 recruiting class, Stefan? Yes or no?
I'm fine if it's yes. Would not be surprised if it's no, though.
Gillis?
I think they're on the roster. I think the starting lineup is JJ, Quincy Porter, and Ennis, and then Chris Henry Jr. is your 4 who rotates in fairly significantly. I think Quincy Porter is really good. So
I think Brandon Ennis starts game. I think your starting game 1 is Quincy Porter, Jeremiah Smith, and Brandon Ennis. I'm not totally opposed to Chris Henry Jr. showing up and being better than Quincy Porter. I don't think that would be outrageous. I think the game 1 starting lineup is on your roster.
Well, more accurately, maybe the game 2 starting lineup is on your roster because they play at Texas. It's like, are you going to throw?
That's fine.
Yeah,
sure, that's fine too.
You're going to throw that? Yeah, that might be
the most romantic thing I've ever heard in my life. Like,
listen.
Well, no, I was just pointing out, like, it's like they're going to get through. They're going to get through the first few games.
Both of you are stepping around the question to hedge it.
No,
I'm not hedging anything. I'm sticking with my.
In August, every August when we do mark it down, you say, "What is the starting 11 on game 1?"
I agree with you.
That is the standard at Buckeye Talk.
So fine, let me ease your pain here. That is not what this question is for on this pod.
Okay, who starts?
Who are the starters? I understand. Like, here's the so fine. I'll answer the question, and this will maybe because this is the answer you guys are giving. I'm going to actually give the answer. I think Brandon Ennis is going to be a starter on day 1, the way that C.J. Donaldson was a starter. But their starting running back this year was Bo Jackson.
Yeah,
I think that might apply to everybody not named Jay. I also won't be shocked if whoever they get in the portal, Brandon Ennis is sharing a spot. So fine, from a technical standpoint, Brandon Ennis might start every single football game this year. But I think he's going to be sharing a role in 2026.
You
the way
can't
that
ignore
Paris Campbell and KJ Hill did.
Yeah, you can't ignore that the receivers that have come up in terms of portal, whether it be visiting or interest from Ohio State, are slot guys.
Right. So I'm going to say no. I'm just messing with you guys. I know why you guys are doing what you guys are doing. You're doing the market down Monday hedging thing so you can be right. I get it. That's why I wanted to take that pressure off of you guys because this is not you don't have to be right here. We're just having a conversation. The time to be right will show up again. I promise you. It's just right now we're just trying to have a conversation. I do not think the starters, that all 3 starting receiver positions are on the roster right now. And how active they are in the portal is why. In fact, I would have said, had they not been looking at receivers for the past week, like 5 days since the portal's been open, I would have said, I think you guys are doing yourself a disservice by not looking at the portal and seeing what's out there. They are already doing that, which means that Cortez Hankton, who is in Columbus working already, he has already started his process of evaluating the room and going, I need to go get this. I need to go get this. I already have this. I already have that. Because last year wasn't it. And I'm pretty sure his boss agrees. Biggest questions for the wide receivers going into the offs. This is not about 9 months from now. It's just for the next 4 or 5 months here. Andrew, what's the biggest question about the wide receiver group heading into the offseason?
Yeah, I think it's who can separate themselves to start opposite JJ. Like Stefan was talking about the slot guys that they're bringing in, and that's fair. Ennis is obviously still here, but it's like, is Quincy Porter like is he? I think he's really good. I think he's going to be really good from everything I understand. That's kind of the prevailing wisdom. But like, is Quincy Porter going to be able to hold off Chris Henry Jr.? Who is that guy on the outside? Because whether or not you think Ennis is capable of that like 75 catch type year, one of the things that makes Ohio State receivers great is not just that they're all really good and they're all really talented. It's that there's multiple of them, right? Like nobody's remember that 2023 season, it was Marvin Harrison Jr. and then a dude who couldn't even play for the Columbus Aviators towards up. Like nobody can remember that. Like remember 23? Emeka got hurt. Remember how great they could have been? Hey, remember this year with JSN and Olave and Wilson? So the thing that makes this offense special and this offense go is who's your number one, but maybe more accurately, it's who's your number two. Like who is the counter to we're just gonna triple team this guy. So is it Chris Henry Jr. or is it Quincy Porter? And I think it's gonna be one of those two.
Stefan?
Is Chris Henry Jr. ready to be Jeremiah Smith? I don't want to get reckless. I don't want to reckless, but like, I don't know. He has a chance to be a stud. He has a chance to be a stud from day one. And I agree. I think Quincy Porter is going to be a pretty good player. You know, got to get him healthy. Got to get him, back on the development track that he was on last season. But I don't know. Ryan Day spent a lot of time when he could have been preparing for Indiana trying to get Chris Henry Jr. It's clear that they have some pretty high expectations for this guy and really like this guy and what he can bring. So I'm excited to watch him in the spring. It's gonna be tough because the three of us, we like to divide it up and make sure that we see as much as we can see at practice. It's gonna be hard knowing that Steven's gonna call dibs on Chris Henry Jr. and I'm also gonna want to watch Chris Henry Jr. and Gillis is also gonna want to watch Chris Henry Jr.
As long as you know, man. As long as you know. What's great is like this is the first time
you love the tight ends room this year. You should watch the tight ends. Mason Williams, go get eyes.
Yeah, go watch Nick Lauder.
That's what I loved watching this year. Don't put
you
that on
me. About it. You were the one
talked about how they were the deepest position group.
Watch your favorite position group.
Yeah, they were because I was. Yeah, you want to know why the wide receivers are my favorite position group? Because I'm not always just going to talk good about them when they're. I'm going to be honest about them. You guys are lying to yourselves, looking at recruiting rankings, not being honest. I do think it's cool though that this is the first year that you guys have been here where you're not going through an off season where there's a quarterback battle. So like the priorities shift in terms of like what we care about, what we can talk about. I think you can get a little bit more nitty gritty with the football talk when quarterback is not a conversation the same way. Sure, it will be like, hey, how does Tavian St. Clair look? Does he look like a guy who might be ready to be a backup if something happens? But it's not like no one's going to be charting quarterback throws the same way and trying to evaluate, did this guy do better than that guy? There's a clear hierarchy this year. And this is only the third time since Day's been here that there has been a clear hierarchy on like the quarterback situation. So we don't have to worry about it nearly as much. I'm not saying we're going to be ignoring Julian Sand, but it's a different conversation than it was a year ago where we're trying to like, hey, Julian, I know you can't say you're the starter, but you're the starter, right? Like this year we can talk about culture and stuff with him. I want to see JJ get better at everything that doesn't have to do with the ball coming his way because I know he's good at that. I know he's good with the ball in his hands. I think he's got to step up as a voice in this room, especially now. Like Hartline is gone, and so him and Cortez Hankton need to be in lockstep for the next 12 months of his life. He needs to become a better blocker. Like that's not great. And I know I've been saying it all year, but like, dude, you make the block, I think Ohio State wins the football game. And there's a lot of other things that happen. It's not all on that play, but everything else trickles off of Miami's up 7-0. You just hit a big play in the passing game. Sure, Julian missed Max Clare on the play before that, but it could have been 7-7 or at worst 7-3, and it's 14-0. Like that's a huge swing of momentum. That's literally a 14, and it's not the only time it's happened this year. I think JJ is awesome at everything other than like the nitty gritty stuff. And I think that's where I think his next growth as a receiver needs to be is his presence in the locker room, his presence in that room, but then also as a blocker. Because other than that, there's like nothing to complain about with him. He's awesome in every other sense of the word.
Yeah. During the course of this conversation, someone had mentioned the Purdue game, and I was reminded that the first play of the game or whatever it was, the touchdown wiped off the board. Like that was not his first costly, blocking error. The first one was just, against Purdue. They won the game by a billion, and Purdue's not good. Second one might have ended your season.
Because, he's the best player in college football. So the standard's a little bit higher in how he's going to be able to do anything. And plus, why this is important is because of Chris Henry Jr. Chris Henry Jr. is going to be attached at the hip with Jeremiah Smith for the next 12 years. JJ is going to be for Chris Henry Jr. what Marv was for Cornell, what Emeka was for JJ, what Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, what Terry McLaurin was for Chris Olave. We can keep going. That's it's not the only reason Emeka came back, but part of the reason he did come back is because he wanted to make sure that he showed JJ how to do this. All right, well, now it's your turn to pay it forward. And you got to show Chris Henry Jr. and Quincy Porter how to do this. It can't just be Brandon Ennis, because that's great and that's culture. You're the best player on the team. Your voice matters more than anybody else's. And that's all I got to say about JJ. Because JJ is great. Just, he's 20 years old. He's not done growing up. He's not done developing, which is the scary part. College, as good as he is as a college football player, he is going to be a very scary NFL player. Atlanta, how about we tank? Get a top 6 pick here. So we can put JJ and Drake London on opposite sides of each other here. How about that? That's just me being a fan. Let's take a break, and then we're going to switch over to the cornerbacks here on Buckeye Talk.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So our orders get all backed up. We're drowning in paperwork, then actually drowning, careless fighting off sharks with a stapler, and pirates are pillaging the office copier, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant goes beyond the resume, using unique insights to deliver a smarter shortlist. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
New Year, same extra value meals at McDonald's. So now get 2 snack wraps, plus fries, and a medium soft drink for just $8.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again. But if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, we are reviewing every single position on the roster. We just talked wide receiver, and now we are going to talk cornerbacks, where Jermaine Matthews and Davison Igbinosun were the starters. I'm going to save Lorenzo for safeties, because he was technically more of a safety than a corner. So this is more of a Davison Igbinosun, Jermaine Matthews, Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott, Bryce West, Jordan Woods conversation. For now, Stefan, did Ohio State exceed, meet, or fall short of its expectations in 2025?
I would say met expectations. I think Davison took the step that we were all hoping that he would take this year. I thought Jermaine was about what you would expect as he kind of stepped into a starting role. He wasn't like an All-American caliber guy, but I think we all had pretty reasonable expectations for what he would be, and it'd be a pretty good corner, right? And sure, the Indiana game wasn't necessarily his best game, but I thought he played pretty well against Miami. I thought he played really well against Texas. So you think back to some of their biggest games this year and the way that he was able to play. So you got Devin Sanchez to develop and get significant reps. So we were talking about, it's Gillis, you brought up the example, like Quincy Porter, we think he's going to be awesome. He was also hurt. We didn't get to see a ton of him this year. Devin Sanchez, we got to see a ton of. And even in moments where it didn't look great, I think, I can't remember if it was you, Steven, who talked to him at media days, or if someone else on the beat had talked to him at media days and just talked about the UCLA game was tough for him. Like everyone knows the UCLA game was tough for him, and he knows that. But that's fine. Like a freshman corner playing against a Big Ten team, even if it's not necessarily the mightiest Big Ten team, there's going to be learning curves that come with it. So between the guys that were at the top, and then the 5-star Devin Sanchez behind them, I think you met about what you would hope for in that group. I think you balance out the Devin Sanchez development with, we didn't necessarily see a ton of Aaron Scott, and that's maybe where you were below expectations a little bit. And obviously now he departs and he's not part of this room moving forward. So that's, it all, whatever the highs are, could maybe be balanced out a little bit by the lows. But overall, I thought this position group was about what you would expect it to be. And I thought they took a good step forward after losing Denzel Burke, who was, say what you will about him. And obviously the Oregon game is the first thing that everyone wants to bring up when they talk about him. But he was a foundational piece in kind of the culture and the fabric of that room. And Davison Igbinosun kind of took that baton and was the leader in the foundation and changed the culture in his own way. Jermaine Matthews fit it well. Devin Sanchez fits it well. I think the room's in a good spot, and they did about what I expected in 2025.
I think Denzel Burke was like second team all rookie
this
year in the NFL. Like, he had a really good rookie year.
Awesome year, yeah. He had an awesome year.
He had like 11 pass breakups. Good for Denzel Burke. Gillis, exceed, meet, fall short.
Yeah, same thing as Stefan. I thought they met him because I think there was an expectation that Davison was going to cut down on the penalties and he was going to be better, and I think he was. I think the Jermaine experience was probably met when you take into account the whole thing. Like, we watched that Texas game and we thought to ourselves, and Matthews might have an NFL decision to make in like 3 months, because Jermaine looked incredible against Texas. And I think there were some good, really high ups like that. Stefan mentioned it. I don't think he was necessarily very good against Indiana. I think there were other moments where it was just like you didn't see, moments with him. There looked to be some miscommunication in that Miami game. Like, I saw a clip that somebody tweeted about like Caleb and Jermaine kind of getting into it, of just like screaming on the field. So it's like, there was something there. So I think the the Devin Sanchez thing is interesting, because I think like this is a good story idea. Like, and maybe I can write this in the offseason of like, I think Jeremiah Smith ruined people's brains, because anytime there's like a highly rated 5-star recruit coming in, especially like the best player at their specific position, everybody goes, oh, he'll simply be incredible from the moment that he steps on the field. And I think I'm not saying everybody, but I do think there are some people who are like, oh, well, who's the next Jeremiah Smith? It's like, I don't know. We do the same thing with like 6th round quarterbacks, right? It's like you see it in the NFL draft every year. It's just like, who's the next Tom Brady? Nobody. Stop it. It's like, no number one blah, blah, blah is going to be Calvin. Like, there is no other Calvin Johnson. Like, they're just freaks of nature. They're like, Jeremiah Smith is not going to happen every year. The number one receiver in the class every year is not Jeremiah Smith. The number one corner in the class every year is not going to immediately be Darrelle Revis or like
Derek Stingley was.
Yeah, that's the thing. But that's so rare. So I thought he was solid. Like, I thought if you maybe lowered your expectations a little bit, considering kind of, I don't know, like Devin Sanchez can still be a top 10 pick and not be generational and not be like this is the greatest corner I've ever laid my eyes on. So yeah, like, I don't know. I thought they met expectations for things that people looked at and said, you know what, this was probably right what I expected, or there were highs and lows that probably just kind of balance out to what you thought.
Fell short of my expectations. Jermaine was good. Davison stopped holding on to people. But you had 2 highly rated recruits in their second year, and neither one of them was ready to play. And they both got jumped by a true freshman. And now neither one of them are still in the room. And, it's fine because we all think Jermaine Matthews is coming back. But what if he wasn't? If he wasn't, Aaron Scott would still be here. But he was 2 years into his career and couldn't get on the field. Would you feel more confident? Would you feel as confident about that room as you do with Jermaine Matthews coming back if he wasn't coming back and you had at least one of those 2 guys stand? Probably not. Because that's too much of an unknown at a position that can burn you at times. So for me, it's falls short, because just like the wide receiver room, there is an element to if they could have rotated if they felt like guys were good enough to rotate, and they didn't feel like guys were good enough to rotate. Granted, they played less snaps. So that goes back to, can you please stop playing like a turtle and just can you go to speed limit at least and stop trying to go 5 miles per hour every single game? But still, I don't know, man. There were 3 5-star recruits in that 2024 recruiting class. Edric Houston had a role. Jeremiah Smith has a role. And then there's Aaron Scott, who didn't have a role. And I think that's unfortunate that he didn't have a role here as a 5-star recruit from Ohio in his second year here. So for me, it's falls short, because I just don't think that room came along as well as they thought it would come along. So with everything that Devin Sanchez was, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, you had 2 top 60 recruits, one of which was a 5-star, and they couldn't get on the field in year 2. In a world where the guys ahead of them were not playing so well that you absolutely had to keep them on the field at all times. I mean, how many times did we talk about Lorenzo Styles and like, hey man, I don't know. Like maybe Jermaine Matthews is a better idea than nickel. Okay. Bryce West couldn't have been the start nickel. Maybe I'm just more cynical now that players are getting paid and whatnot. And I think I'm more inclined to acknowledge the player's role and why something didn't work out and not just put 100% on the coaches than I used to be. I still think it's mostly coaches. I still think it's like, this is what I said to our texter, 614-350-3315. I think it's 60% on the coach to get that player ready, but that other 40% is on the player to also take the necessary steps to become the player he is supposed to be. And I think before some of this, I would have been like, okay, it's like 85% the player. 85% the coach, 15% the player. Best thing about this position group for me, Stefan, is that Devin Sanchez, man. What? Like, come on. I think this was best case scenario for his freshman year. He didn't have to go be JJ. He didn't have to be Derek Stingley. He didn't have to immediately be an all Big Ten level corner, but he did enough this year that he had a role on special teams and he was their dime corner. And he had some good reps. He had some bad reps. But by the end of the year, he was playing his best ball against Miami in the Cotton Bowl. And I think that is best case scenario is the dude where it's like, as a recruiter, like best case scenario, you might not keep all these DBs, but if you can hold on to Devin Sanchez and everything is fine. That's how Tim Walton talked about him. If I can just get Sanchez, I don't care. Everybody else, Naeem, Dorian Brew, McNutt, all of y'all, whatever. If I get Sanchez, this is a successful recruiting cycle. You got him, you played him, he looked pretty quality. And you're bringing back a veteran cornerback alongside of him. I think that's best case scenario for this group, and I think that's the best thing about the position in 2020.
Yeah, I would echo most of that. I think too, like this is a position where I think it's okay to lean on the portal as a crutch when you kind of need to, and it feels like that they're in their spot a bit where it's like you have a veteran coming back, you have a young player who you feel really good about. Sure, you would have liked to at least keep one of Aaron Scott or Bryce West and maybe kind of keep them on this developmental path, but like I don't know, if Ohio State goes out and gets a corner in the portal here, and it's a veteran dude who's played a lot of football. I think Kane Lee's kind of the guy everyone's got circled. I mean, honestly, at the time that you're listening to this pod, maybe he's even made a decision about where his next stop is going to be, because it sounds like that at the time of our recording, he's on campus visiting. So like, but that's a guy who has played a ton of football. Like in 3 years at Auburn, I think was a starter immediately. I think like started like week one as a freshman, and then kind of, I don't think he started every game that season, but it's like last 2 years he's been a consistent starter for them. So like if you're in a spot where you can bring a veteran back, have a young player who you feel really good about, and then also go into the portal when you kind of need to and find another veteran player to bring into the mix, I think that's an okay spot to be. So I think the best thing for me is that even in a year where you're losing probably your best corner and two of your kind of young foundational pieces, you still feel like you're in a pretty good spot and can get someone pretty good out of the portal. I think that's the best thing for this group, is that all that happened, all this change has happened, and you don't feel like it's necessarily chaos mode for the cornerback room.
Kane Lee, once upon a time, was committed to Ohio State. He flipped to Auburn on signing day. And that's, if you ask Tim Walton, like, is there one guy that you lost where you're like, man, I really wish we hadn't lost that guy? He'd tell you it's Kane Lee. So if they can get him on the back end and continue this run of guys from the 2023 recruiting class that Ohio State thought they had, and then some things went sideways, and so they didn't get them. I mean, they already got John Walker as a defensive tackle from UCF. Caleb Downs was a guy in that 23 class that they thought they had back then, and he ends up going to Bama, and they get him on the back end. Maybe Kane Lee could be a part of this. To Stefan's point, he might already have done that by the time you listen to this podcast. Gillis, what's your best thing? And then lead us into your worst thing as well.
Yeah, the best thing for me was it's kind of with two people. It is the development that Tim Walton had with Davison. Like, I think that's a really good sign for like the future of the room, which is why I think it's a good sign. Like obviously having Davison kind of evolve into a player that wasn't as grabby. He only had 5 penalties this year compared to 16 the year before. I mean, he was literally averaging a penalty a game. So those numbers kind of went down. And when you're a physical corner, you can kind of live with that. When you're kind of asked to do the role that he is. I mean, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. That's obviously one of the reasons why I'm so high on him. But Davison, I think, played very, very well. So that obviously was really, really helpful to Ohio State to have kind of like a true number one. Like, I think he was their best corner this year. I don't know how much debate there is about that. I think he was pretty clearly their best one. Then you take that, and it's like you had development from Tim Walton that I think kind of showed you maybe where this can go. Like, he was able to kind of help Davison turn this around, and obviously Davison deserves a lot of credit for that, but I think so does Tim Walton. So when you're talking about a room that kind of needs a really big development year for some guys, Jordan Thomas, Jay Timmons, they're 2 incoming freshmen. You look at what the room's going to be like in 27. Okay, Devin's going to be here, and then what? We don't know. We don't know 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going to need some development there. And I think Tim kind of showed his development chops. So yeah, I think that's very impressive, and I think that's a really good sign. That's what you had. The worst thing about the room, this was actually really hard because I thought they had a pretty good year. Like, the worst thing that I really could kind of think of was that you did lose depth. I think that was maybe my number one thing of just, you lose Weston, you lose Scott. And it's like, I think those 2 guys were guys that you could probably count on to contribute in some way next year, whether that was as starters or at least as depth. I think losing that is always a bad, and maybe not bad, but definitely like a negative sign, because you always want to develop talent. You always want to have guys play. Like, I've pointed this out a bunch. Like, look at how old Ohio State's team was. They had 1 starter on that defense that wasn't draft eligible, and it was Jalen McClain, who was in his second year. Like, they were not relying on first and second year guys to get it done. They were third, fourth, and fifth year guys. So, losing that kind of pipeline, if you do believe that you are a better development program than other top schools, like if you think your development is better than Alabama's or Georgia's or Oregon's or Notre Dame's or whoever, you did lose some of that. And now you have to go portal shopping. Like, that does stink. So, that was probably the worst thing that I thought was, so whether you want to say that's, you didn't get them in the game enough and they transferred, whether that was, you want to say that you need to rebuild their depth, whatever it was, whatever kind of path you want to take with that. That to me was the kind of the worst thing about this group right now, is that depth that you had been building up for a year or two is now no longer there.
Worst thing about the position group, Stefan.
The stuff with, I agree, like losing Bryce and Aaron is tough. I think it's like, you're right, Stephen, like at some point it's on the player to like be the guy, but also like as we enter the 2026 season, if you're a 2024 recruit and like you're not necessarily guaranteed a starting spot, like I get why you would want to move on and go elsewhere. Like that's just the reality of the sport now. Is like, if you're entering year 3 and you're not very confident that a starting spot is yours, like that's just, you're just going to move on. And like Bryce West at the time of our recording just committed to Wisconsin. Like he landed in a pretty good spot, all things considered. I know Fickle's kind of under pressure, but like he's at a Big Ten program with some history to it. So I think this is nitpicking. It's kind of how we've nitpicked the defense most of the season when we've talked about them. Ohio State ended up 10th in the Big Ten in interceptions, kind of middle of the pack. It was a very sound defense, and the secondary and the corners were very sound, but it wasn't a defense that kind of wreaked havoc and caused a ton of takeaways or caused a ton of turnovers and things of that nature. Maybe that's a number that you like to see go up just a touch last year. I think, I just closed the tab, but I think Maryland ended up leading the conference with like 19 interceptions. Ohio State at 10. If the number was more like 14 instead of 10 this season, I think that maybe could have swung some things a different way, a few different ways. And, you kind of look at their schedule and it is what it is. They kind of cruise through in the regular season, but like, they got a pick against Indiana, a pick against Miami or something like that. Could have gone a long way. I know Caleb Towns forced 17 fumbles against Miami and, they didn't recover any of them. But that is maybe just like, again, it's nitpicking. But the worst thing is like, for defense that didn't create a ton of turnovers, it's a secondary that didn't get a ton of interceptions. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. Just playmaking.
Ohio State's 2024 recruiting class had 8 guys in the top 150. 3 of them are left. You want to guess who they are?
Jeremiah Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Edric.
Mm-hmm.
24 was...
Does this count Julian Saying?
No.
I should know this. Give us side of the ball.
No. Just take a swing.
Was he in more?
Yeah, that's your guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Stefan, what's your guess?
I'm struggling. I'm trying to think of guys who are entering their 3rd season. I can't think of anyone.
Just take a swing.
I'll also say Ian Moore.
You're wrong. And you are wrong, Gillis. Garrett Stover. He was number 142.
Yeah.
Mylan Graham, gone. Aaron Scott, gone. Aaron Nolan, he left after his first year. Bryce West, now at Wisconsin, and James Peoples in the portal. I think I want to do a pod in the next couple of weeks of like, why should people care about recruiting? in this day and age. And it's not a negative, it's just you're never really done recruiting a guy. So
you have to re-recruit him every year.
You have to recruit him every 24 hours. He's not 8 top 100 recruits. And this class is entering the year where they're supposed to be like the heart of a roster. 5 of the top 8 guys in it are gone. I remember back in 2019, we made such a big deal out of the fact that the heart of that roster was a 2017 roster because 6 or 7 of those guys popped. Imagine if Jeff Okudah, because he wasn't a full-time starter until his 3rd year, he rotated in 2018. Or Josh Myers, who didn't start until 2019. Wyatt Davis, who didn't start until Demetrius Knox got hurt against Michigan in 2018, which was his 2nd year. So he didn't start until then. Imagine if those guys were 2 years in, can't stay, not on the field. Somebody's offering me more money. I got to go. And I'm not saying that to complain. I'm saying it because we're in a very different place in this sport right now, where you don't just have highly rated guys just baking in the background anymore the way you used to. So we might even have to change the way we think about depth and what that means, because back then, this year, depth for Ohio State at cornerback was a 5-star recruit. I don't know if that's ever going to be true again at Ohio State to that extent, where he's not a true freshman 5-star recruit. Stefan, 1 to 10. Quick answer.
8.
Gillis.
8. ESPN 8, the Ocho.
10. Corners were fine. I mean, yeah, Elijah Surratt won some one-on-one battles, but Elijah Surratt's pretty good. So I don't know.
They scored 13.
Yeah, they scored 13 points. So, all right, it happens, man. They had one receiver all year have over 100 yards on them, and that was Indiana. So it's okay. Are the 2026 starters already on the roster or in the recruiting class, Andrew?
If by recruiting class you mean portal class, then
No.
yes. Then no, they're not on the roster, nor in the 2026 recruiting class. Then
Which
I
is
think
why.
I think they grab a portal starter. Not Davison, Devin, Jermaine, and then portal guy. I think that's your 1, 2, 3. Stun me if what day is the portal end? The 16th. If you get to the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and this is, I'm not reporting anything, but it would not stun me if you add a depth guy in that mix to help out. If you think that there's a depth option there. I would not be, which is a long way of me saying I would not be surprised if they take 2.
You can still add people after the 16th. They just can't go in after.
I thought you had to have 16.
No, but not technically, but maybe because of enrollment.
Yeah,
that's what.
If you wanted to get here in time for the spring, you would have to. I don't know what Ohio State's enrollment date is.
Yeah, that's a case-by-case basis with Ohio State. But also, I mean, Indiana, Ole Miss, because this sport, Oregon, because this sport is nuts. They're going to have a 5-day window.
They're going to have, yeah.
So you can, listen, there's no rules. Everybody just does.
Yeah, so basically, I think they'll take another one.
I know.
And they play at the time that you're listening, they play in 2 days. They lost 3 running backs. If someone rolls their ankle, what do you... Dan Lanning, put on your pads, dude. Get in the backfield.
He joked. James Crepia asked who the nickel was going to be. It's it'll either be me or one of the coaches. And it's funny, but yeah, you probably should.
All jokes have a kernel of truth.
Yeah, sport is. I'm assuming you agree with that, Stefan. So we can move on.
I do. Yeah.
Biggest question for the position group heading into the offseason
is Devin Sanchez ready to be the dude? Because he's going to have to be. And I don't mean. Is he ready to be a reliable starter? I mean, it's time. It's saying someone as a sophomore who played a lot as a freshman, it's time to be a dude. I don't think it's putting unrealistic expectations on a guy like Devin Sanchez, all Big Ten, first team caliber type guy.
Go ahead, Gillis, before I go haywire here.
Yeah. Well, we can just make this a Devin Sanchez question because mine is Devin Sanchez not just ready to start, but when you go to Austin, Texas on September 12th, I think that game is he ready to announce himself to the world as lockdown? This guy is the number 1 corner in the 2028 draft. I think that's right. Is that it? Is he gonna put himself? I think that is the day, and I think you need to see signs of it beforehand. So is that the day where Devin Sanchez enters the ballpark with other number 1 corners? He puts himself in conversations with dudes who have gone in the top 10, will go in the top 10. So yeah, that to me, it is about building towards that game, right? Like, is Jahdae Barron, the kid out of Texas a few years ago, like, is he as good as him? Is he as good as Leonard Moore, the presumptive 27 number one corner at Notre Dame? Like, is Devin Sanchez in that category? And I think we're going to find that out deep in the heart of Texas while Stefan and I have cowboy hats.
So Brandon Finney at Oregon.
Well, that dude's very good.
Which I think is interesting because he wasn't their highest rated cornerback in that class. Naeem obviously was, right? So there's almost this Denzel Burke effect to Brandon Finney where it's like, man, that's not a guy. If you'd have said 12 months ago, hey, one of these DBs in Oregon's recruiting class where they went heavy on trying to find DB talent, which one of these guys is going to be like bar none a stud by the end of the year. I think most people would have probably assumed Naeem or Trey McNutt or Dorian Brew first, and it's Brandon Finney, and he's a very good football player. I say that to say that I think the spring game is going to be what, like April 15th or something like that. I'm trying to say when the spring game.
Yeah, it's always like the Saturday before the draft.
Yeah, but they might be moving it up. It's either going to be the 11th or the 18th. So let's say this. By May 1st, Devin Sanchez, we should be walking away from spring practice thinking that's the best cornerback in the Big Ten. And his only competition is Brandon Finney. That should be the goal for Devin at this point. Because you're right. I don't think we did it last year. Once he was here, when he was a recruit, sure, because that's a different conversation of like us trying to emphasize how important he is to the recruiting class. Once he was here, I do not think any of us were like, Devin Sanchez is going to be the best cornerback in college football by week 6, the way that Jeremiah Smith was the best wide receiver in college football. I thought we were very responsible with how we talked about him. And the fact that he had a role was like, okay, now we have something to work with. He is going to start next year. And Aaron Scott hopping in the portal was all the validation we needed to know that, oh, Devin Sanchez is going to be a starting corner next year. It's just going to be opposite of Jermaine Matthews instead of opposite of Aaron Scott. Yeah, if I had to make a list of like guys who need to grow up this offseason, and I don't mean that negatively, because sometimes when you say, oh, a guy needs to grow up, it's only immature. No, he's just a true freshman who is going from small role that you can handle to you are now going to play 65 snaps. And me and him talked about that before the Cotton Bowl, the fact that like we talked about the Illinois game, and that was the first time he had ever played that many snaps before. He admitted to me, that's the first time he had ever played 60-plus snaps in his life, let alone just in college. And he played in a pretty high-level division down there in North Shore in Texas. Like him and DeCorian Moore have been going at it for years. And he had never played that many snaps before. And that was a high-leverage situation. And I thought, Stefan, he had some good moments, but he also had some moments where it's like, you probably want that rep back. But also you're a true freshman, so it makes sense. Cool, you got your feet wet, you know what you're doing now. Time to become one of the best cornerbacks in college football. Time to become a dude who shuts down an entire side of the field. Because if Ohio State is using the portal this year to invest a lot in their D-line, whether that's in retaining Kenyatta Jackson and Caden McDonald and pairing that with the growth of Zion Grady and Edric Houston and on down the list, or it's Chaz Coleman and John Walker and whoever else, whatever it looks like, Ohio State is clearly putting an investment in the defensive line this year and trying to get guys via portal or retention of guys who are already on the roster. It does not look like the same investment is being placed in outside cornerback because they feel they have already made that investment with retaining Jermaine Matthews and having Devin Sanchez year 2 and year 3. Validate that investment. And the way we think that. I think Devin Sanchez is going to be the first cornerback taken off the board in 2029. Brandon Finney has already done his part to make an early case for why I'll be wrong. It's go time for Devin Sanchez for the next 2 years. And that starts this spring with kind of validating, okay, yeah, this is one of the best cornerbacks in the Big Ten.
So I don't want to belabor the point here, but I am curious like what you guys have to say. Quick off the top of your head, Devin Sanchez is the blank most important player on Ohio State's roster. Let's exclude Sayan because Sayan's number 1. So non-Sayan list, what percentage or what number is he on the most important rank to, if Ohio State wants to be really good and win a national title, this dude's got to play up to his potential?
He's somewhere between 5 and 10.
Interesting. Okay. Because I was thinking maybe like I think I would probably have him top 5.
Yeah, but then you start listing off players, and it's like Jeremiah Smith, Bo Jackson.
Yeah, I think he's more important than Bo Jackson. I think he's certainly going to be better.
Well, we just saw what the offensive line cost them this year.
Yeah, so is Austin Cerevel going to play left tackle? Yeah.
Ian Moore,
Sure.
Josh Padilla, Gabe Mansick. It's just like you start listing off guys, and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
Devin
I think that's
Sanchez,
fair.
he just starts
Your
falling.
point is valid, though. I mean, he's going to be a very important player.
Yeah, the premise of what you're asking is fair. It's just if we had a semantic conversation about
Basically, how important is a true lockdown number 1 corner to Ohio State? Because I think Devin can do that maybe better than anybody else.
I think in a world where the linebackers were the true undoubted weapons this year, I don't know if we will say that for certain, that the linebackers are the weapon this year. And so you go, okay, where's your weapons? And if Devin Sanchez or Jermaine, we can throw him, like if either one of those guys turns into a guy who next year teams can't throw to that side of the field, that will do wonders for the other 10 guys on the field. And the reason why we're putting it on Devin is because he was the best cornerback in his recruiting class. And as a true freshman at Ohio State University, where there was a 5-star recruit who was a year older than him, he still managed to play 300 plus snaps and played. Like there were 3 true freshmen who played against Texas. Jarquez Carter played 1 snap. Nate Roberts played 1 snap. Devin Sanchez played like 12. Like in high leverage snaps, he was on the field. And they didn't just do that just to do it. They did it, one, because they invested a lot in him and they needed to quickly find out what he was. But also because that might do wonders for a guy going into his second year at Ohio State. Biggest question mark, Gillis, for the corners in 2026. Heading into the offseason.
What? That was it. Yeah, we already talked about it. Yeah, that was mine. It was, is Devin Sanchez ready to be a number 1 corner for September 12th against Texas? Because that is the game, the first time that we're going to see it. We're going to hear about it. We're going to watch it. But I don't like. You're gonna. That game's gonna be a 6:30 local kick on ESPN, and he'd better be ready to go. So
Stefan? That was mine too. It was about we all talked about.
We already did that. We just got off on such a Devin thing that we kind of lost the question.
Okay. Well, dibs on the bus. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. That's wide receivers and corners. We'll do tight ends and safeties tomorrow, which was going to be a fun conversation about tight ends. Oh, Lord. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. For Stefan Krajisnik and Andrew Gillis, I'm Steve Means. Talk to you guys later.